the mic. Welcome to the Community Board 2 Schools and Education meeting for March. My name is Patricia Larry, I'm the chair. To my right is Mark Fitzgerald, vice chair. We're still waiting some more board members. Once they arrive, I'll announce them. We have a special guest speaker today. Emily Hellstrom is the founder and executive director of the Literacy Academy Collective, a nonprofit organization dedicated to advancing evidence-based literacy instruction. With a passion for equitable education, Emily works tirelessly to empower teachers with research-backed strategies, advocate for structured literacy, and support struggling readers, including those with dyslexia. So with that, I'm going to introduce Emily Hellstrom, our invited speaker.
Thank you so much. I just do want to say I'm not the executive director, but that's okay. I'm actually the director of external affairs and strategy, but a co-founder. So I'm sorry. I just want to, I'm a co-founder and yeah. Do you want me to start by just sort of saying a little bit about our organization?
Sure.
Would that be good? Okay.
Go right ahead.
Fantastic. So Literacy Academy Collective is a nonprofit. We are a school support organization. And what that means is that we help support what is soon to be a network of public schools. And we help provide them with teacher training, professional development. We actually pay for some extra coaching and staff that is in the schools. And then we also do other things. We actually have a statewide policy initiative that I'm going to talk a little bit about today. But we were founded by a group of parents, of moms, actually. All of us have students who struggle with dyslexia and language-based learning disabilities. And we came together because we saw that very much the system is broken and there are barriers that are really almost insurmountable for most public school families. We managed to get our students and children into various places that would help, be that anywhere from tutoring to actually private special education schools. But we really saw that even just getting a neuropsych, getting a lawyer, accessing any of these services are very, very difficult. So we set about to change the system, and Literacy Academy Collective is the result of that. So we did open the very first in-district public school in New York City, and really like one of only 2 in the nation that is specifically designed for kids with dyslexia. It's in the South Bronx. It's called South Bronx Literacy Academy. And we are underway and on the way to opening the second one in Brooklyn, Central Brooklyn Literacy Academy. That's going to be in District 17, hopefully opening this September.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So I can show a few slides. I saw that you had some other board members. I didn't know if you wanted to say hello to them, but.
Hi, Emma. Smith. Our other, I just want to let everyone know our other board member just arrived, Emma Smith. And I don't see any others online, but I think there'll be.
Janine is online.
Janine is there.
Welcome, Janine.
And Matt Metzger is here too.
I'm here too.
Yep.
Oh, and Matt Metzger.
I'll be very rude and ask, do you need me in person?
No, it's all right.
I'm happy to, Emily, I'm sorry. I don't want you to think it's any measure of your topic. Of all of them, I would come for that.
Oh, that's so nice. But listen, everything I'm going to share via slides, and I think Zoom is totally acceptable.
I appreciate it. Patricia, if we're going to do a reso, just let me know and I'll scoot down.
The reso I emailed last night. You can, if you check your email, you'll see it, and we'll discuss it.
Do you need it for quorum? Do you need me for quorum for the reso?
Oh.
We won't have enough for quorum. We won't have it. Well, yeah, it's okay. We won't have enough of quorum. We'll just do it at full.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sorry, I shouldn't have spoken. I didn't realize that that's.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I'll just share some of my slides. Some of you saw some of this, so I'm going to go quickly through and just sort of explain a little bit about our school, and then more about sort of our statewide policy initiative and what's happening with that as well. So yes, Literacy Academy Collective. We are, let's see, hold on here. Let's see if I can. We always show this slide because this is what drives us every day. We believe that literacy is a civil right. And we believe that access to literacy is really one of the most significant civil rights issue facing New York City and actually New York State today. In order to access anything in school, you must know how to read and to read fluently. And so we need to make sure that students are doing that. And I'm sure you guys are the schools and education committee, you realize that that is actually not happening.
Right.
Many of you are familiar with these scores. New NAEP scores came out just recently, and they're not good. Only 31% of New York State students are reading at or above proficiency. That is abysmal. It is like unacceptable. People should be screaming from the rooftops. But if you also look at, the aggregated data, or disaggregated data by demographic, they're even worse. 14% of our Black students are reading at proficiency. It's unacceptable on every level. Those get even worse for students with disabilities and multilingual learners. The thing that we often don't talk about is this statistic on the left, which is that 95% of students, if they are taught with evidence-based practices, have the cognitive ability to learn to read. That has been proven time and again, many, many studies over decades out of the National Institutes of Health. And this is just real. 95% of students can learn to read. So we got to do it. And we know how, right? We know that skilled reading comes from language comprehension times word recognition. We say times because if any one of these is missing, then it's zero. Your child is not reading. So it takes the top of the reading rope and the bottom of the reading rope in order to do this properly. So let's just see, we know the what and the how for effective reading instruction. It not only takes explicit and direct instruction in this cumulative way, but you've got to focus on syllables, syntax, phonics, morphology, sound symbol correspondence, and semantics. These are what it takes to make good literacy instruction. And we're not doing that. And the students who are dyslexic suffer the worst. And we're failing them because it costs $8,000 to get a neuropsych exam, to retain a lawyer, $70,000 for private tuition. We live in a wait to fail system for so many of our students. And the consequences are too severe, like 30 to 40% of incarcerated individuals age 19 to 21 on Rikers Island have reading and writing disabilities. This is a study done. Many other studies in other states show upwards of 70, 80% of incarcerated individuals have, severe reading disabilities or illiteracy. We do have a solution here in New York City. Our model really targets kids who are at the bottom of sort of access to literacy. We say that we are really at the intersection of race, poverty, and disability. We're up in the South Bronx, and our school is serving students who come in at 16th percentile or below in their national benchmark. And actually, this year, we accepted students, our average was 4th percentile. So we are really hitting kids who are not reading on grade level in any way. So they are 2 to 3 years behind. We give a very specific model to kids. It's really sort of the overview. There's lots of these little pieces, but the overview is we do literacy all day, every day, woven into everything that we do. We've got targeted admissions. We've got a structured program all day. We've got a consistent school culture that is very important. Routines and structures, they look the same across classrooms. That is not the case in most schools. We have integrated support. So speech and language is happening during the school day. Kids are not being pulled out. We have culturally responsive and sustaining practices. We have books that provide windows and mirrors for kids, but also, one of the first pillars of the first pillar of culturally responsive and sustaining education is that students experience academic success. And what that means is they actually have to feel what it feels like to learn to read. And that is what we're providing for them. And the way that we do that is with highly trained teachers. What this ends up doing is really moving students. So this is a benchmark that we use that actually we're super excited about because we didn't actually expect our gains to show up on a benchmark because benchmark is grade level. And this shows the pathways to progress. So when students come into us, they come really having flatlined. They are not experiencing that success. So they're not even on any kind of pathways or trajectories. And you'll see by the end of the year, we had, all these students. So even the kids who are in the red and orange they are actually moving. They might not show up on the benchmark, but really what you're starting to see is some of these blue, green, and yellow students are moving at an even much higher trajectory. So 47 out of 63 students made enough progress that they moved on the benchmark. Even kids who are just in these small, tiny skills-based groupings are also experiencing success, and these are happening at multiple times the expected rate. So 3 times expected rate of growth in first sound fluency, 3 times expected rate in phonological segmenting, nonsense word fluency 4 times the expected rate. That means a child is seeing a word that actually doesn't exist. That means they can't do it any other way than decoding. And they're making 4 times the expected rate on that. Nonsense word fluency and some of these other little smaller benchmarks, they're really making tremendous gains. We went from 4th, I forgot to include this slide, but we went from entering at 4th percentile, and kids are ending the year at almost 8th percentile. It means they're doubling that benchmark. So it's really, really exciting. So that's what that experiencing, like, I can do this. But it's not just data points that we care about. Also, it's like, what are kids feeling in the moment? They are showing, we're 3 times borough-wide attendance average, but we're a full 10% lower on chronically absent students. And this is for kids who have to come from far, like it's borough-wide. So even just to get school, parents are making a huge sacrifice in order to get there. And we're still seeing that their chronic absentees are lower. Teacher environment, the teacher-student relationships, we're really seeing this go very high. This engagement piece right here, I just want to point out, this is answers to students on like their sort of yearly, end of year, like they take a little survey, and they are rating themselves 24 points higher than the district average on engagement. So it's not just like, people a lot of times, this is like one we're super proud of, because a lot of times with phonics, people are like, it's so boring. Why are you doing this? This is drill and kill. It's really thrilling for students to feel like they can do this. So they are actually feeling a sense of belonging and a sense of engagement. So we're really excited about these data points as well. And so we really think one school is not enough. And so really, like, our goal is to create this network of schools because we know that we really do need to see this impact go far and wide. So enter Central Brooklyn Literacy Academy. We already have an interim acting principal, Jason Borges. He was actually the head of NYC Reads, so you might recognize his name. We feel like it's a huge coup that we got him coming out into the field as our principal. And it's going to be, a CBLA will be in District 17, which is Central Brooklyn, kind of on the border of Crown Heights and Bed-Stuy. Not only will it serve students from District 17, but it has priority in District 16, District 13, 23, and 32. These are districts that historically have been really under-resourced. The need is really, really great, which is why we situated ourselves there. We want to go where we are needed the most. These are also districts that have sort of been ravaged by charter schools coming in and taking students. So we've got some population issues in terms of like school population. And so therefore, like the resources are coming in. And we feel like we can be a help in that. It might seem a little bit like, oh, are we pulling kids? But what we intend to do is really create this ecosystem of bringing this outward. We see that actually a third of our population at SBLA comes from charter schools. They're coming back into the system because they're not being served in those charter schools. And so we see ourselves really as part of the district ecosystem and being able to bring this literacy outward. So as you see, we see our school as really the anchor to a change strategy. And while these happen in sequence on my slides, they're really happening simultaneously. We are also doing a huge pilot project with District 1. We are now, because we do our summer teacher training in District 1. We're going to be actually at PS 20 this summer. So we're serving during the summer, during Summer Rising, over 120 students in District 1. We're not only training teachers from SBLA and CBLA, but also District 1 teachers. We now have a footprint in 8 District 1 schools. We're really excited about. That is thanks to a super cool grant from Trinity, Wall Street. And so we now will, at the end of this summer, have trained teachers in those 8 schools and are working in not only after school there, but also now during the school day. So that's really piloting a districts-wide strategy that we intend then to bring to District 17 and other districts that we go into so that we can start to see, again, like how are we training teachers? How are we working in after school so that we can affect more students than are just in our building. The idea being that you might be getting good literacy instruction in K and first grade. Maybe you're getting a little after school program. Maybe you're getting some pull-out supports in small group. If it's not working for you, then maybe it's time to go to an LAC school. So that is really like where we are on our schools. We have a PEP meeting on April 30th. That we will be on the agenda for that PEP meeting. Hopefully we will pass. We have lots of signals that we will. It was a little bit of a rocky rollout. We got tied to a school closure, which we know is very, very difficult. And so we've been working with NYCPS to make sure that, that we've sort of been able to be uncoupled from school closure, because we know those are really tough on families, certainly, and districts. But everyone on the PEP seems really excited about CBLA. So we're not worried about that as much anymore. But so that vote is on April 30th. Once that passes, we will be full steam ahead for CBLA. And then the idea is to then look ahead. Hopefully, we know we have the mayoral race coming up, but to look ahead to opening something in Queens and possibly something in Manhattan soon is the idea.
Amazing.
So that is our district work. I could actually pause for questions if you want, or then I could go into our statewide policy initiative.
I think, do you have a question, or should we just keep it moving?
Yeah, just keep it rolling.
Yeah, keep it rolling.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Awesome. Okay, so I just want to just briefly do a little background. When we first opened this school and started working with teachers, we quickly realized that even the most savvy teachers who had been in the system, who had been literacy coaches or had their master's degrees in like amazing things like teaching literacy or teaching English to students who are acquiring English as their second language. Any of those master's degrees you would think would prepare you to teach in this way. And we found that that was not the case in any way. And we were having to retrain teachers like from the ground up. And it was really, really tough because a lot of times, especially teachers who had a lot of experience and a lot of classroom experience in classroom management or relating to kids in many, many different ways, we were having to really take it down to the studs, if you will, and give them a lot of training. And it takes a lot of time and a lot of change management. And it's hard on teachers. We were like, what is going on? How is this possible? And so at the same time, we were being mentored by some people who were having a lot of success in this space. You might have heard of the Mississippi Miracle. Mississippi went from dead last in teaching students to read. They literally were 49th and then 50th in the country in fourth grade reading scores. They have the highest child poverty rate in the nation. That is not something that they are proud of. But in 10 years, over the span of a decade, they are now 9th in the country.
That's amazing. That is amazing.
It is profound. But not only that, Black fourth graders in Mississippi are number 3 amongst their peers in reading in the nation. Hispanic fourth graders are number 1 and number 2 for math scores in the country.
Wow.
It is profound what they're doing. And what they are doing is they're training teachers in evidence-based practices. And Louisiana and a couple of other states, North Carolina, Utah, a couple of other states have said, what are you doing, Mississippi? We want to do this too. And we were working with some folks in Mississippi as mentors, and they said, look, we're doing this work with states, maybe eventually you want to. And we're like, listen, we got to open a school, we'll get back to you. But the commissioner of New York State, Betty Rosa, the New York State Education Department, came and visited our school, and she talked with our teachers for 2 hours, and she was like, what is going on? We've got to be part of this change. And so we partnered with her, with the governor's office. We had to get all of these people all around the table to do something called the Path Forward. And that is part of this cohort model of working with states and changing some of the levers. And basically you work for a full year and you come up with a state action plan. And that is what we do. And it's called the New York State Path Forward Initiative. And we have an action plan.
Nice.
And the goal is to bring evidence-based practices into teacher training in New York State. And we basically launched the initiative about 18 months ago. Last June, we came up with this action plan. It went before the Board of Regents. They were enthusiastic about it. And this September, we started to put it into action. And just to say, we have 15 members on our steering committee. We have a leadership committee. These are members of CUNY, SUNY, the independent colleges, deans. We have professors. We have the state commissioner, the state board of regents, literally, the chancellor of the board of regents, really members of every single higher ed leadership institution really across the board. And then we also have 55 members of working groups. So this is like a huge, huge initiative that went into creating this action plan. And the idea is to really create something that is consistent across all educator prep programs. So I liken it to, like, you would never look at somebody graduating from a medical school and wonder if they know how to, perform CPR or do diagnose a heart attack, somebody having a heart attack. You would expect that to be the case, and we need that consistency in educator prep as well. Educator prep being higher ed who train teachers. So we concentrated on these 5 areas, and we came up with this action plan, and it has 6 parts. And basically the parts are around, we said we need a framework that everyone across the state, all 86 higher ed institutions who train teachers, there's 86 colleges and universities that train teachers in New York State. They must work off this framework. It's got to be grounded in evidence-based practices. We came up with a baseline reflection so that everyone can take a look at what they're doing and measure themselves. And then we have to do some type of program review that NYSED has got to be in charge of, looking into them and saying, are we all on the same page? And then we need, and that's that first area. Then we need in the second area to sort of say, where are we in this? And so the state has agreed to a data dashboard that is specifically around educator prep. Where are our teachers going? How are our ed prep programs doing vis-a-vis the framework? And then, tracking them and saying, and looking at the certification exam and saying, how are teachers who do, take these certification exams, how are they doing out in the field? So starting to try to say, how is higher ed playing in this game? So those are the first two, and NYSED has agreed to do all of those things as long as they are funded to do, which is what that resolution is talking about. And then, which is what this third action area in red is talking about, is really saying we've got to fund this both from the state legislator perspective, but then also like educator prep programs have to really also do some work on their programs. So we, LAC, committed to raising money. We've raised about $4 million, and we think we're on track to raising about $6 million to launch 9 to 12 pilots with educator prep programs, 3 from SUNY, or 3 to 4 from SUNY, 3 to 4 from CUNY, and 3 to 4 private institutions. We'll be launching this summer. They will be looking at their coursework and working with what's called a technical service provider. So somebody outside their programs and saying, what do you have? What do you have going on in here? How does it align with evidence-based practices? And how do we make sure that you're on track for preparing educators in the way that they need to? It's really hard to do. It takes a lot of bravery for professors who have PhDs to look at their practice and be humble and say, okay, I don't always know what I don't know, and I'm going to change. So we have these sort of TA providers doing that with them, both from an evidence-based standpoint, but also from a change management. How do you get professors to agree to do this work? And then they have agreed to change their syllabi, to change the way that they're teaching. In order to be a part of this program, they have to agree to move. And then in the end, we have somebody from the outside coming in and doing a full review on their program and giving it a seal of approval and saying, obviously this is a long range plan, but how are you doing this with your partner on the ground in your local district? How are teacher candidates going out into your local district? How can you do better? And then the sixth part, the yellow action plan, really talks about how do we study all of this and see if it moves the needle. So it's a huge undertaking. It's a 3-year program. We're about halfway through the 3 years. We are going to launch the pilots in June. But the framework is going to be out there on March 30th, along with the baseline reflection that will be out in the field. The program review is what we really would like to get funding from the legislature from. It takes about $500,000, we think, for NYSED to hire 2 to 4 new staff members in order to do program review of these 86 different higher ed institutions. And so we think, we hope that we can get this funded in this cycle. If we don't get it funded in this cycle, we're going to go back at the apple because we need to have this program review. It's a huge part of it. But the dashboard is on track. That is already funded. So yeah, NYSED is committed to doing that. And so as of right now, the next sort of piece in the plan is to look at the certification exam. And we're working with our steering committee to sort of really see how can we put a very meaty, evidence-based certification test in place in order to make sure that we have teachers who are prepared walking into the classroom.
Wow. I'm blown away. I'm blown away by all the work that you guys have done since you last came. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I'm glad that you are aiming at NYSCD to get this funding. Why did you guys choose 500,000? Sounds like you need more than that.
We do. So $500,000 is sort of the first step. The way that the action plan is written, there is an existing program review cycle of every 7 years. Higher ed institutions get certification, like they get accreditation. That's the way it works. But the accreditation comes from a national review process. It's not specific, particularly. NYSED has agreed to do an additional accreditation process that would go side by side from the national review that would really look at literacy. And so what they're looking at regulations. They think that they will put some of this into regulation after they get the baseline reflection back and sort of see where people are. Those regulations will point to the framework. We think that that is on track. And then the idea would be that they would create their own review process that would go hand in hand with the national accreditation process. And they have something called a CAP program, where if we get, like, for example, the certification exam that would change, and a higher ed institution, let's say they had X number of people that didn't pass that certification exam, the state would come in and say, hey, what's going on? And they would start to look at that program review. So their program review happens every 7 years. That seems like a long time, but it's happening all the time. So they would work this new program review into the process. In order to do that, they need 2 to 4 new staff members who would be specifically onboarding this new program review. We think that we can make that more robust, but this is what they agreed to do now. So $500,000 would be in order to fund those 2 new staffers.
Okay, and the money would be coming
from the legislature. It would be in the budget, basically.
Okay.
And the way that I newly understood how NYSED is funded, it's an agency that is not particularly under the aegis of the governor. So it falls a little bit outside the governor's. I mean, they're deeply involved, obviously, but they sort of sometimes look to the legislature in order to put forward budgetary priorities. NYSED has put this in their budget, but we think that us pushing as well will help elevate it, because NYSED has lots of things that they want to fund. And so they have lots of asks every year. So we are calling, and they have put this in their asks. They've put 2 staffers. We're like, oh, excuse me, I think we need 4 probably. So we're doing an extra push in order to make sure that they really get what they need. We think this is just the first step in a review process, but we think it's a good one.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, yeah. Do you have a question, or I can keep going?
No.
Keep going?
Go ahead.
You have a question?
Keep going.
Well, how quickly would you expect to see improvements in literacy rates if you get the funding?
So this is long-term stuff. We feel that the Mississippi, it's often called the Mississippi Miracle, but in Mississippi itself, they call it the Mississippi Marathon, because these are not quick, fast changes. The fact that NYC Reads has put in place some high quality instructional materials, we know that, people have various viewpoints on it, but starting to put parameters in place that say, hey, we expect a certain level and quality of evidence-based practices in our classrooms, coupled that with some of the changes that NYSED has been making around literacy in general. And specifically in this area with this action plan, we think that higher ed is starting to really perk up and notice. We got over 150 different professors, deans, and universities system-wide on multiple different forums that we held. Like, people are paying attention to making these changes and wanting to make these changes. I think the real key is going to be, how do we keep this up in light of all that's going on and the many competing priorities that people are going to be having with both at the federal level, at the state level, state budget wise, and then mayoral. But I will say, keeping literacy in this space, Mayor Adams, for all of the, that he has going on, he put this forward, and NYC is it's the largest school system in the country. Where go they, go everyone else. So it's going to be very important.
Any other questions from my committee? Emma, Barb, that's great. Do I see, all right, should we go over the resolution?
I can stop sharing.
Yeah, stop sharing.
Yeah.
And see if anybody else from the public has a question. No. Let me see. Question. I have another question. When you were here last, you said there were some pilots that were happening in District 2.
None. Yes. So for District 2, I would say, the biggest. There are a couple of things that are really in play. I think the statewide initiative, the path forward, is a huge one because it affects everyone. It affects how every single teacher comes out and shows up in your classrooms, and it helps take the pressure off of districts for having to train teachers. There's always going to be professional development that has to happen, but when teachers come out and sort of knowing a lot of stuff in advance, it takes the pressure off, and they can focus on preparing teachers with certain curriculum rather than trying to do all of the backloading. So that's one. So this is for everyone in the entire state. I'd say number 2, we are always looking. We're going to be expanding. We continue to look at the space that NYU promised this district.
Right.
And, we would continue to say that is that making sure that our classrooms and our schools are equipped to educate all students with disabilities in particular. The fact that would be a raw space and that, it could serve, it's in a high, transit rich area, and could potentially be, a middle school for the entire, district. I always keep looking at that, close to District 1, close, accessible to districts all over. So to me, that is enormously important, and we should not shy away from saying that. And then, right now our piloting is happening in District 1, but I think that we are piloting things that could also affect other districts. Obviously, District 2, is highly resourced in many ways. That means that, there's a role for this district to play in order to make sure that we know that literacy rates, just because they might be, good, does not mean that they couldn't be better, but also that they have a role to play in helping shoulder the burden for all districts and making sure that all kids are literate in our system. So yes, I think that there are partnerships that we could do, certainly with District 1, and making sure that that we're talking to each other. But right now we have to go where the need is greatest. And that is not always District 2
Right,
per se, but that doesn't mean that there aren't people who need it in District 2.
Yeah, we agree.
We absolutely agree.
Yeah.
And I commend the work that you guys are doing. I applaud it. I mean,
It's amazing.
it's amazing.
I mean, you guys have done so much.
And I just want to give a huge shout out to my colleague and dear friend Janine Kiley, who is the chair of LAC's board and also a co-founder, because she has done a huge amount of lift on this as well.
Wonderful, awesome. Shout out to Janine.
All right, yes.
Any questions? I don't see any more questions from my committee or online, but we do have you have a question? Come closer to the mic because they can't hear you online. Maybe come to the table.
I wasn't here last time you were here, so I was wondering if you could talk more about the NYU promise something for y'all.
Let's wait until this fire.
Yeah, are you guys still there?
A little bit.
No, I'm fine. All right.
Maybe repeat your question.
Yeah, so I just wanted to know about like what specifically NYU promised and why things have not been delivered, I guess.
Yeah, it's such a good question. I will say I want to give like props to the community board too, and specifically for the schools and ed committee and to Janine for sort of unearthing this in many ways. So maybe I could give it to Janine to explain a little bit about it. If you feel prepared, Janine, or I can as well.
I just switched to a fancier room. I'm going to answer the questions from William Sonoma Zoom room. I think there are a couple things that were happening. The initial deal that our former council member struck with NYU for their rezoning was basically had an option for the city to build a school, and it had a 1-year expiration date. And so we worked with the city to extend it.
And what's an option?
And I'm sorry, thank you. An option is the city has the right, but not the obligation to build a public school where the Morton Williams grocery store is. And it was a poorly designed option because there was a huge building, about 900,000 square feet that NYU since built called 181 Mercer. It's on Mercer between Houston and Bleecker. And that would have been a great location for a school because you know that NYU wanted to build that building. That's not where it was. So it was put in this smaller building that probably, may never get built.
Going to get built.
Yeah, I mean, it's 100,000 square foot building. So why does, there's not a lot of incentive for NYU to want to build this. They don't get much out of it. But the city they negotiated with NYU, and there was a lot of pressure from local seniors and residents who used the Morton Williams grocery store. And, it was pitting a typical city situation, pitting a school and a grocery store against each other. So what happened is the option was extended. It's like over a decade. And part of the reason I guess I'm okay with that is public school enrollment was down and money was down after COVID. And realistically, the city wasn't in a situation either financially nor demographically to really support a school at that time. And so this kicks the can down the road. And I just think it's important that the community board, like once a year, especially with term limits, make sure that this is documented in our district needs, that this is a very valuable option that the city has to build a public school. We were, estimating it at $500,000 per square foot. So, $50 million option. It could be more. I just want to highlight that the Planned Parenthood building, which is a beautiful building. It is already an existing building, not just the right to build one, was put on sale today for $900 per square foot. So these estimates are very, very conservative in this market. So bottom line, I hope that one day there will be a school built there, but maybe I'll have grandchildren who might go to attend that school.
But I will just put in that many of our school buildings that exist currently were designed by CB Schneider, really at the turn of the century and
last century,
exactly. Last century. And they're severely wanting. They're not ADA compliant. They do not have the ability to make smaller spaces, breakout spaces, rooms for like, there are many, many, many reasons why having a new design is a very, very valuable thing. And it is extremely important that when we are having a rezoning and we are deciding to get something for the community, that then we hold those entities who receive upzoning to really make good on that. And that's, this school was promised to the community, and in a somewhat, you know, as Janine discovered, it was promised for a year, even though the rolling budget is in a 5-year cycle. So it was promised and held out to the public in many, many forums that were public, but even though many people knew that that couldn't even be acted upon unless somebody had caught it. And I just want to shout out Janine Kiley, who reads documents very thoroughly, who found that and nobody else did. So
Yeah, I don't know. About,
well, I'm just
Slash
saying,
Janine, which if I wanted to look up the document, what document would I be looking up?
you would want the restrictive declaration. I have it bookmarked. It's an old document. I'll send you the link.
No. I know it. I'm just saying for whoever asked. Yeah.
Yeah, no. It's but the new document, I have that somewhere. I don't know if I have an electronic copy yet. I probably do on my hard drive. I should share that. But we should coordinate with the office on that, because we just need to make sure that this just doesn't disappear. And I think more broadly speaking, in Community Board 2, we don't actually have that many school buildings in Community Board 2. We do have one CBGA Snyder building. It's City of School. Actually, there's 2 schools in there. City of School, which is a transfer high school, and there's also District 75 High School in that building. But I think it's safe to say that there are a lot of schools south of 14th Street downtown, particularly in, I'm just going to say, you know, the population in Tribeca, Battery Park City is those are relatively new neighborhoods in terms of, you know, New York City history. They had been industrial before, so there weren't schools in those neighborhoods. So what you actually see is on the east side of downtown, the west side of downtown, you see newer buildings, newer construction, because these were built to meet the increased population. And on the east side, you see the older buildings and, you know, a higher percentage of students living in poverty. And frankly, I see, you know, people hate to,
Yeah.
this is just my personal view, but there's a huge opportunity to potentially, you know, build some state-of-the-art schools, address the class size issue, modernize these buildings, and then convert some of these old school buildings to housing. But that's just you.
Yep, I would agree, especially senior housing. And I feel like, you know, what would be really important to note is that, for example, our schools are borough-wide. So that's, and I say middle school mostly because we know that, you know, populations up in, you know, way up in Inwood and up in the north, and that might not be able to get here as elementary, but they could for middle school. People travel, you know, quite a distance for middle school, and so that it could be a very attractive option for that. So anyway, just wanted to put that in there because that is something that CB2 could really have their eye continue to be focused on.
Right, okay. Thank you.
I actually have another question. When was the, you mentioned COVID, so when was the school proposed to NYU to be built?
The
Like how-
NYU rezoning was in 2012 when it was finalized. And I actually wasn't on the community board when it went through CB2, but I was on the community board once it was finalized. So it was in that time frame, and there was huge overcrowding, because I think the peak birth year in New York City was maybe 06 or 07.
Yeah.
And so that was, so 5 years later is when the kids are starting kindergarten, and every school downtown was overcrowded, and there was a big push. And initially, I mean, we have some detailed reports. It's on the CB2 website. You know, NYU been promising a school forever in different ways. And, you know, the headline, oh, we're going to build a school, and we're going to build a core and shell of a school. And it ultimately was switched to become an option. So, kind of kept getting downgraded, because.
And yet, Scott Stringer was the borough president at the time, and he stood on a stage at that time and said, the community won in this upzoning because we got a school. Like, that was the selling point for this community. And here we are, so.
Oh, that makes me so
Yeah.
happy. Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
It's really unfortunate.
Yeah.
I will say there were a bunch of other sort of winners from the NYU rezoning, none of which are highlighted, but I'm just going to state some of the facts. 505 LaGuardia, which is Mitchell Lama Housing, had a ground lease. I don't remember all the details, but that was about to expire, and NYU owns the land, and so that got extended at very favorable terms. So that's, it was some affordable housing that was extended. And I guess that's really kind of it.
That's it. That is it, my friend.
That was kind of it.
I think they saved the dog run. I think that's the only other thing that the
Yeah,
dog.
they moved
owners won. They moved
they
it,
moved
you
the
know?
dog run.
Yeah.
So, actually, if you let me share a screen, I pulled up the list of different promises. If
Can you share? I think, are you a
let me
panelist?
see. Yeah, I am. Okay. This is from a presentation that it's on this NYU CB2 website. So and the sources are below. In the 1960s, NYU promised to build an elementary school where the Coles Sports Center is now where 181 Bursar is. In 2010, they promised to build the core and shell of a 600-seat school, and this was covered in Chalkbeat, which is, I think, part of Gothamus now. And then they basically promised to buy the land for free. And the option would expire in 2025. That was the beginning of the rezoning. But the final deal that was inked was land, but the option would expire basically a year and a half later at the end of 2014. So you can see how it kept shrinking.
Okay, do you have any more questions?
Yeah, actually, I'm sorry.
I love these questions.
Just one more, I swear.
You can ask as many as you want.
So was the school specifically for people with learning disabilities, or was it just working with, like, were you guys going to work with that school?
The school would have been, well, the way schools get built in New York City is the School Construction Authority builds it and New York City Public Schools programs it. So it was the requirement, it would have been about 600,000 square feet or 100,000 square feet. Is that what it was? It would seat about 600 students under the current class size situation from 2012. And it could be a K-8 school. So it could be K-8, it could be K-5, it could be just a middle school.
And so it wasn't promised, but the idea was at the time, people were saying we don't need a school because we have enough schools in this area. And that was a way to sort of kill it. And I think, Janine and crew said, hey, excuse me, I think we do need a school.
Yeah.
We need a school for kids with dyslexia and language-based learning disabilities, other struggling readers. And that is one way that we could really program that space, and it would be awesome. So that is, and I know there was a community board 2 resolution that said that,
Lots of them.
We've written lots of resolutions
Oh, for this?
for that school,
For
yeah.
that
Yeah.
specific-
It's on our website.
yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
And the CEC at the time as well.
Yeah.
or actually, I have one more. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry.
All right.
When did you start? When did you guys find? When was the established year?
So we started sort of slowly, just, I was on the Community Education Council and Janine was on the community board. Both of our kids were really struggling. And I don't think it's too much of a stretch to say suffering. And we started to gather parents. Actually, my very first meeting of the Students with Disabilities Committee was in this room. And that was like in 2000, oh gosh, Janine, what was it?
COVID, 2019, 18
Yeah,
maybe?
18, maybe something like that. And I think I was like 2 steps ahead of some families. Janine and I were sort of figuring it out and gathering parents and realizing that we were hearing the same stories over and over and over again. And like I think we had like, I don't know, we had like almost standing room only in this meeting because people were showing up saying, what do I do? What do I do? And then COVID, of course, lit an accelerant on everything because there were so many families who were really lost. So we just grew. And so, yeah, right before COVID, LAC, we sort of formally incorporated about 3 years ago as a 501c3. But yeah, our school opened in 2024, but we had a pilot in 2023. I think I'm getting the dates right.
Okay, thank you so much.
That's on our website as well. I can give you our website.
Yes, that would be perfect.
Of course.
Yes.
Yeah, and I just want to add that one of the other things we started doing, which sort of led to let's do this school, was, Patricia and Emily and I and others, we would almost annually for several years, including one during COVID, we basically did is your child struggling to read? What do you do? How do you sue the DOE? What do you ask for? So basically, and we could probably do that in, every community board in New York City once a year and fill a room with 100+ people, because there is such a need. And so we were basically helping parents work around the system. And so
we realized like, this is crazy. Starts to get really nutty.
Yeah. So the
then
school actually works within the system and
Yeah.
Okay.
lots of them.
And we felt very uncomfortable, like suing the school district to get your child into a setting that can teach them to read. It, for people who are dedicated to the public school system, like we are, it doesn't feel good. Nobody wants to take those dollars out of the system. And yet, the story of what our children went through, it's very, very hard on kids. They acquire a lot of shame and anxiety and frustration and anger. Like one of the things that happened to me, that really made me understand in a different way is that my kid started really acting out. He was, very, very angry. And a resolution came across my desk at the CEC saying that kids were getting suspended and expelled at very high rates, particularly Black and brown students and particularly boys. And all of a sudden I was like, wait a second, my child was being told like he needed extensive therapy. Other kids' children were just being suspended and expelled. And it's really, it's very, very painful.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank you, Anna.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing.
You bet.
Yes.
All right. With that, I am going to move to our resolution that our committee, well, do we have any other questions for Emily? I have one more.
Yeah.
Is there any screening now for kids?
So there is.
Kind of catch these.
So, screening is a really tricky thing because universal screeners can catch, like screeners are screeners. They're not diagnoses. Neuropsychs are diagnoses, and they're extensive and they're really, really tough. There can be 9, 12 hours and they cost thousands of dollars. Thanks to Brad Hoylman, they might be paid for by your insurance, or they should be paid for if you can find one who takes insurance.
On that.
Yes, which is great. But really, so much of what needs to happen once you find that you do have dyslexia is evidence-based practices. They just need to be given to you at higher and higher doses. So the medicine is the same, but it has to happen a lot. You have to have lots and lots of repetitions in these things in order to open the neural passageways in order to acquire reading. So basically right now, every K first and second grader gets what's called an Acadience benchmark screener. That will start to show, like, are you on level? Those are really good generalized screeners that should start to show. What really should happen is parents should be saying, what is my benchmark screener? Tell me what my score is. And if your child is, but a lot of times parents don't know to ask, or schools don't give parents this data. So we see that a lot, where if your child is in the 30th percentile, you should be starting to say, what's happening, and not listening to teachers who say, don't worry, don't worry.
Right.
Nobody should be told, don't worry.
Yeah.
If your kid's performing at, 4th percentile, you should be worrying.
Okay.
Yes. So those tests are in place, those screeners are in place. They're just not necessarily being used properly. And definitely parents are not being told. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes. Thank you, Emily. That's it for me with questions. All right, then I'm gonna move to, well, should I share the reso before we go to business? Or,
Yeah, in case there are any questions.
yeah, all right, I'm gonna share my screen, hold on. To discuss this. Is it up? All right. So here is the resolution. Community Board 2 resolution in support of a $500,000 funding for NICED to advance the integration of science of reading into educator preparation programs and certification standards. Thank you for coming with this resolution.
Well, thanks to Janine for helping me coalesce around this as well.
Okay.
Like this language, so that
I think it's a great reso.
Yeah, it is. It's fantastic. We just put it in the format of how CB2 does their
yeah.
resos. So my committee, I shared it with you last night. And it's basically going over everything that Emily presented. And I'm slowly going down. Some people in our committee love footnotes, so I had to.
Sorry. Yeah. I mean, again, I'm so sorry that the language, sometimes educator prep programs, it sounds complicated. So I hope it
Yeah,
makes sense.
so I'm slowly going through this. And then therefore be it resolved is Community Board 2 believes that literacy is a civil right. All children deserve to receive evidence-based reading instruction grounded in the science of reading. You guys read. And number 2, strongly urges New York to include $500,000 in the One House budget to support implementation of New York State Action Plan, the path forward. And you guys can read the rest. So I don't have a quorum. Well, we'll discuss it. Is there anything else? My committee?
And if there's any questions on this, I'm
Yeah.
happy to answer.
I mean, it's well written and well resourced, so I really didn't have any questions.
Yeah, that was helpful to hear. I mean, you had asked initially about what is the money for and like, what's it gonna look like? And, that's also outlined in here, which I think is helpful.
And just so everybody's really, really clear, this is what NYSED and not only is it in our state action plan, but that is what all the 15 committee members and the leadership has sort of agreed is really what needs to happen. So just so that you feel like we're not like going outside of the realm, like if you want to look at who are the members of our steering committee and the members of our leadership committee, but Commissioner Betty Rosa, Chancellor Lester Young, the head of CUNY, the head of SUNY, the head of the independent colleges, organizing person, as I said, faculty, these deans, like that is what they're recommending. So it's not just like, we think this should happen.
Right.
A lot of people think it should.
And if you get this money, it would be
Ongoing. Once it's in the
Ongoing.
budget, it's ongoing.
annually be getting 500,000?
Yeah, to fund these 2 staffers.
2 to 4.
2 to 4 staffers. And then basically what happens is they would create a program review that is specific to New York State that would be in line with evidence-based practices. So they would be able to review. Now it phases in, so they're not reviewing everybody all at once. And there are other states that do that. We may like come back and visit you and say, hey, listen, look at what Ohio did. They reviewed with an outside independent that costs 4 million. So we're asking for a relatively small amount to do this program review, but it would be rotating so that these programs would come up on a staggered basis over 7 years, and then 7 years would start that again, but that they would be held to a higher standard than the the national, which is really does nothing to look at literacy. Very, very little. There's like one sentence. This would be more in depth.
Okay. Thank you, Emily. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen to see if there's any questions from the public. No. Other committee members, Matt, are you still there? You have any questions? Did you get a chance to look at it?
So when I came to the meeting, my first reaction, there's a punchline, don't worry, was, oh God, not again, right? Because we have talked about this many times. And then I remind myself of the work that Emily's doing and Janine and others. And I feel like we're underselling it with all of our comments because we've heard, we've dealt with it a number of times and written resos on it. But my God, just the tenacity of all of you guys, the incredible, the good kind of myopia, right? Just fixation on something that needs to happen. And so I, as a community member, thank you tremendously. I know that the benefits are going to be reaped 15, 18 years down the road, 10, 15, 18 years down the road. And therefore it's going to be hard to pinpoint. But in 10 or 15 or 18 years, when crime is down, or when aggregate happiness levels are up, or people are just kinder to their families because they're less frustrated because they can't read, you will be seeing the fruits of your labor. So I commend you tremendously as a New Yorker, as a CB2er, and as a person who cares about both of those things. So that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Wow. All right. And with that, I want to thank you again for coming.
For inviting me. It is always such an honor to be here, and thank you very, very much.
And don't
for all
hesitate to
your
come back, because I mean, this work,
Totally.
it's ongoing.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is.
And
We're gonna have our own New York miracle. We
Yes.
are.
yes, hopefully it's not going to take 10, well.
No.
And with that, I'm going to go.
Oh, my only request is that we not call it a miracle.
Yeah.
Because miracles are things that happen and we're like, oh God, I don't know. How did that happen? And it's like, I know how that happened. There are a bunch of Emilys down in Mississippi. There are a bunch of Janines down in Mississippi, right? They're just working their butts off.
Yeah.
That's how it happens. Not a miracle. The fruits of labor. So thank you all.
Thank you.
All right.
All right, guys. You bet. Thanks for inviting me.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
It's so good to see you.
Oh,
It's been too
You got
long.
it? Yeah.
Thank you all.
I'm going to go into the session.
Thank you so much.
I know we don't have quorum, but we'll have it at full board. Well-written reso. Thank you for bringing that along.
Yes.
And thank you, Janine, for contributing to it. I know that you had a hand in this. And our committee will work on it and decide if there's any tweaking to be done. There is one other thing that I wanted to move on to in new business. Something came to my attention. Let's see if I can pull it up. Let's see if I can share. This was brought to my attention. Congressman Dan Goldman signed this letter. It's regarding, what is it? I don't have my notes in front of me, but the USDA is cutting $1 billion in critical support to schools and food banks to purchase food from local farmers and producers. So that is gonna affect our schools. So I didn't have a chance to bring anybody in to talk about this, but this was like recent, current events. breaking news.
Oh my goodness, it's all breaking.
Yeah, breaking news. And I don't know if we should maybe consider this for next month, or should we write a quick resolution to present at full board to discuss? I wrote up something quickly, but it was ended quickly. Thank you.
Yeah.
I
So
think this is so important. I'm just thinking of, during COVID, I mean, first of all, PS 130 is a Title I school, but during COVID, there were lines around the block for meals at many of, more on the east side of CB2. People
Mhm.
rely on this
Oh,
food for their
Yes.
children.
Yeah, so I was wondering, should we pen a reso that we can circulate within our committee and then present it at full board in April?
I mean,
I'm
I would be
talking to our-
supportive of that, but I am not so familiar with these specific programs. You said $1 billion. I'm like Googling now. But basically they're trying to cut $1 billion that's used to purchase food for schools.
Mhm.
Okay,
Yes.
and food for
When is
schools.
this budget gonna be voted on?
So do you wanna, I'm just asking our committee, do you wanna pen something now or wait and we do some more research?
That's why we asked, when is there
I
a
don't
vote
know. I
coming up?
mean,
Like,
this was sent to me right before this meeting and I just,
so we need to know that before we do anything else.
okay, all right.
So what budget was it taken out of?
I don't know. This was sent to me right before, they just sent me the letter. Let me stop sharing so I can maybe look it up.
Send me the letter.
I think all right, send you a
Send it to
letter.
me.
Can you
Hold on.
share the letter with everyone?
All right, hold on. How do I do that?
Show me the letter, I'll find it.
Email it to you. No. Oh, I'm not. Hold on. Hold on.
Oh, I found a Politico article.
You found the,
This
yeah.
is less fresh than your
Hmm?
letter.
Sorry, people.
Sorry, thank you for sharing this.
Is it, we're suing the Department of Education? Nope. Yeah, is it Becky Frimo?
This is USDA, not.
Okay, I emailed you
Okay.
and then see if you can. I'm sorry, this was sent to me
No,
right before the
no.
meeting and I wanted to discuss it in new business.
I appreciate you raising it.
Did you get it yet?
Yeah.
You got it? All right. And then Mara's gonna share the letter, sorry.
I mean, I'm not gonna share it on the computer, I'm gonna share a link when I find it. Just copy. Let me find the letter. We're having serious technical.
What happened?
I made it go away. My Windows open. There it is.
I know.
Found it.
All right, letter to Secretary
Yeah,
Rollins.
now.
Letter to Secretary Rollins.
Yeah.
There we go. Right.
Found it?
Trying to see. if-
Also, it seems like this might, if I'm looking there, it seems like this funding was just cut. I don't know that it's like, that it's been unbudgeted. Like
So should we just maybe
Okay.
table this until next meeting and then do some research in the back?
Well,
we
I
should-
think that you just have to remember that Congress approves the funding. So maybe
Yeah.
the request is that Congress not allow this funding to be cut.
yeah.
That's the simple answer because right now, the administration is trying to work around Congress, so. um,
All right. All right, so then
That being said, I mean, I think gives you time for, the tons of time until the meeting. You reach out to Goldman's office, confirm this, draft a resolution, share it with the committee and then share it with at the exec meeting, and then it could be new business at full board if time is an issue.
Oh, all right.
But I think the gist of it would be that we urge our congressional, representatives to ensure these funds are not cut for these reasons. I mean, that's really the ask.
Okay. All right. I think I like that approach.
Yes.
Yeah, I like that
Great.
approach. Thank you, Janine.
Makes sense.
And then with that, I'm going to adjourn the meeting if there are no other questions. Thank you for coming, Janine. Thanks for all the valuable insight.
Sorry I couldn't get there in person.
All right, and with that, I'll end the meeting. Bye.
Night.
How do you end it? Is there a,
Just go to your Zoom.
This little,
there, leave?
Oh, no, we have to do, no, that's.
Then whose
This
whose
guy.
computer? That computer? All right, no. You got it?
This is a leave situation too. Mark didn't, oh, there it is. No,
Bye, people. No, it didn't end it. Is there another computer over there?
there should be a mouse.
there, that seems like the mouse. Good fun.